Please like, share and subscribe for more videos. Thank you.
Welcome to another checkmate pattern, and now this is our 11th pattern of checkmates. We're going to have a look at one called the dovetail, and this was certainly one I wasn't aware of before coming up with these puzzles and these examples I'm taking you through. But it's a reasonably, I would say, common one. And what the dovetail is, if you look at the position in front of us here, it involves the queen. So the queen dives into a checkmate position. So this is a very simple example of the dovetail. White to move. There's one way to checkmate, which I'm sure you can all see. Queen to c6. And really what the dovetail is, it's the queen giving checkmate to the opposing king and the queen being supported by something. Quite often a pawn, as in this example. This is the pure dovetail. But you could also have similar patterns with, let's say, a knight, if the knight was on d4, or even another piece somewhere, maybe even a bishop on e8, guarding that queen. So I'm not entirely sure where this name came from. I did a little bit of research, but I expect it's called the dovetail, because if you take a dove, obviously the tail of the dove's meant to be sort of queen, kind of blooming, kind of looking a little bit like a queen, you could say. And maybe the body of a dove is a small, finer thing, like the pawn. So this is the basic dovetail. And now we're going to have a look at some examples from real games where this has actually won the moment for one player. So let's move on to an example now. So we join a position here from a game with Greco of the white pieces, and quite an old game here in the King's Gambit. Well, I say King's Gambit, but it's not a King's Gambit without f4, but it's a King's Gambit kind of attack here. It reminds me of a King's Gambit with the queen on h5 and the bishop flying in with the opposing king in a bad position. White has just played bishop to g5, attacking the queen on e7. So black has to do something about this. So queen in this position comes back to e8. And you can see here white has three very dangerous attacking pieces. The queen, which is near the black king, the bishop on g5, and also this very strong bishop on c4. Again, this bishop on c4 is often a very important attacking piece in the King's Gambit. So that, you know, you've got to try to really pick up these patterns, and you should get into a position when you advance in chess where you recognize ideas, you recognize pieces from other positions, and that's what's happening here. The black king is also weak because it doesn't have any pawn protection. Now white continued attacking with queen to f3 check. There's no adequate way to block that check, so the king has to move king to g7, and now white's played bishop takes g8. And in this position, really, I would say a bit of an amateur mistake from black. Black should try to fight on with king takes bishop, but instead he goes rook takes bishop, and it should be pretty clear to see here how white can do the dovetail checkmate. And by the way, if any of you say this during a game, I give you bonus points. If you actually do the dovetail and you say dovetail checkmate, here we come on the board, you know, I will give you a free DVD. So what is the checkmate? Queen to f6, and again the tail of the dove is the queen. It's checking the king. This time it's supported by the bishop, and black's king can't move anywhere. So we'll have a look at one more final example of this checkmate, a little bit more complex, and then hopefully you guys will move on to the next video in this series with me. This final example, taken from a real game, involves one of my favourite players of all time, David Bronstein. And if you haven't heard of David Bronstein, you should really look at some of his games. He's one of the most imaginative players in the world. He never became the world champion, but he came extremely close, only just losing an important match against Botvinnik, which he probably should have won. And here he's sacrificed a piece. As we can see, white's got the extra bishop, but the white king is in a very weak situation. So let's see how now, with Bronstein to move, he pressurized the king. Well, first of all, he played queen f3 check, and now king g1 was played. And how do we increase the pressure? Well, I've talked about this quite a lot in the past, and it's something I hope you're aware of if you see my streams. We need to, well, we can't checkmate just with the queen. That's impossible. You need to bring in all your pieces. So the rook on f8 is not doing anything. Let's get that in the game. Rook f6, and that is the rook swinger, swinging around into the action. And here, well, there's a nasty threat of rook g6 check and maybe queen g2. White tries to defend with bishop f2. And the point is, after rook check, the king comes to f1. But this does not help. Black can now do the dovetail checkmate. Can you see how white can not stop black's checkmate in 2 moves? So it's black to play and checkmate in 2 moves. And remember, if you do this checkmate, you have to say dovetail when you play the move. You get bonus points, you know. Ask the arbiter for an extra point if you say it during the game. And if you get thrown out of the competition, well, I don't take responsibility. Just to, just point that out. So it is now queen to h3 check. You're forcing the white king into the open. And it may look like the white king is getting away here, but you should notice these patterns. This is what this kind of little series is all about. We have a pawn, and that pawn supports 2 squares. And here the queen can come over to d3, and again, this time it's a black dove, but the black dove's tail is supported by the little pawn, and it's another version of the dovetail checkmate. So do try these out yourself. Do try to create your own puzzles, like I mentioned before, when you're at home on your own. And also, in the chat below, if you can, maybe, mention some positions, some games where these have actually occurred. Share examples yourselves. And, I think this series could really help you get the patterns into your mind. So make sure you watch the rest of this series. Cheers for now.